Hello, power users. This is a full-length recording of the first Gloo webinar, the Gloobinar Vol.1. We'll be talking about the most powerful Gloo features and what you can do with them, and answering some questions at the end. Thank you to all who joined us, and if you haven't, no problem. There's always the next one. We'd love to have you there.
We divided Gloo in 4 sections. The first one is called Power Gloo, focused more on widgets and design properties and options. The second one is called Fluid Dynamic, is one of the major ones that we have in Gloo. It's focused more on dynamic data, working with repeaters, working with form actions and form conditions, dynamic tags, and so on. The third part is Interact. It's a very unique tool that we developed here at Gloo, which basically gives us the option to create JavaScript without coding, but gives us a bit of a way to control this. We're going to show this today in depth. And the third option is Super Gloo, which has subsections within it, like form extensions and Gloo models, which are things that are more specific for other plugins, for third-party plugins. Here you can see like that some of the features, when you turn them on, they have a little settings next to them, which you can set up. It depends on the feature and the settings that it requires in the backend. Now we're going to jump in, and today we're going to focus on 2 main features at the moment. The first one is Interactor, and the second one is Fluid Visibility, or Fluid Logic, as we like to call it.
All right, so let's start. Here's an example of a website. We have a card here, and we would like to make some changes to the card. So here, for example, you have my name. We can change my name to and as you can see, it will live change. Okay, this is with JavaScript. Now, of course, if you know how to do JavaScript, you know that it takes quite a few steps to build something like this. So then we also have, I'm just going to show the different things that this page is doing, and then we'll look in the backend of how it's built. Then we also have tabs. So these, for example, are different tabs. So we can change the image, for example. Let's grab a different image. We can crop it. These are all Gloo tools. And as you can see, live change, the image is now changed. Right. So how this is done, if we look at the backend, it doesn't look perfectly well on the backend because it's loading things at the meantime. But here, for example, we have a form. This is an Elementor form with a background image, for example. Here on the background image, we have our Gloo tool, which is an upload UI. This is what gives us the possibility to see the actual image that is uploaded. Then if we want to look at the interactor part, so here on the top left, we have our Gloo icon. That's how you can access the interactor. It's basically just going to send you to the advanced settings and then advanced, but this is a shortcut for it. So we have fluid visibility and then interactor. Now you will see there are a lot of different triggers and different events because there's a lot going on. We have one form, we have a second form for all the text. As you can see, there are many different text boxes, and I'll show you how this is working in a moment. So if we go back to interactor, to make JavaScript work, basically you need to create an event and a trigger. So if we go and we look at the event, for example, we can see, let's just find text1 live change. All right, so we're doing an interaction. Here you have some different options. So you can do animations, you can do interactions. In our case, we're doing an interaction. We want to set the text, all right? This is JavaScript interaction, the properties.
Can you click on the interaction so they can see the options in the dropdown?
As you can see, we can set value, we can create an alert, we can add a class, we can remove a class, we can toggle a class.
Just to be clear, I just want to add a little side note. So basically, when you create things with the interactor, the system works in the following manner. The first thing you do is you create a trigger, and then you create events, and then you can connect between those triggers and events. Now, Interactor does a bit more because it also has PHP conditions, and it also has an option to use variables and some extensions that we did, like Zapier extension and data layer extensions and stuff like that. But at the moment, we're not going to cover these. Just want to show you the basics of it. So basically, what you're seeing here is that you can decide of a trigger, which can be any widget or any even form field for that example. And basically what we're doing is connecting the trigger with an event that we're setting up. So at the moment, what Benny is showing you the trigger, right, Benny, or the event?
No,
The event, sorry. The event. So it's showing you how we set up an event. So the event in this situation is the type of event is interaction. We have also animation and so on. And the option that we have, once we select the type of event that we want, we have the option to select from a drop list of actions that we already support. Now, it's Interactor has hooks everywhere. So if you decide that you need to add more, it's very easy to add. We have hooks set up all across the plugin, hooks and filters. So you can add even custom things. And also, when you create a trigger, there's an option to create a trigger event, like a custom code event. We're going to show this in a minute also when we cover triggers.
So just to show how this action is happening, for example, so when we type here, hello, is cool. Okay, this is basically an interactor event, which is basically setting the text. Then I'm getting the card ID of this specific card because I have 2 different cards in here. And I'm setting the text. So this is, of course, an Elementor class, which you need to be able to catch from inspecting it, right? So you should use. There is some little advanced knowledge to be had here with the backend. So you need to be able to find the class of which text, for example, you want to edit. So in my case, I have added a class to my text, or in this case, an ID, so it's unique. And then I'm changing the Elementor heading title. And that's how it's basically going to change the text. Let me just refresh as I broke it through the backend. So this is basically how the interactor is working as an event. And then we need to do a trigger. All right. So if we go and we find my trigger for the live change, I'm doing a key up firing event. All right. You have several of them here, for example. You can see we can do a click, we can do a double click, a hover, mouse enter, mouse leave, key down, key up, submit, ready. So when the page loads, if it's a form, so an input change in a form field, all right? So in our case, we want to key up, and then we're looking at our form field, all right? So when we are changing something here, it will fire the event and change this text. So that's pretty much how this is working.
I just want to clear for people who, everybody here are people that knows a little bit about Jet Engine, about working with Elementor. So I just want to mention that what you're seeing here is basically a work of Elementor Pro. We're using the forms from Elementor Pro. We're using Jet Engine listings to fetch the listings in different situations here. And the third thing that we have here is we have this connection that Gloo is creating between different elements of the page. And as we go along with the other examples that we have today, you'll see that we basically can interact even between 2 listings. And we'll show this a bit more in depth. We started from a very advanced example right away, but we'll in a minute, we'll take this down a little bit and show you some more basic things and how we set this up. We're going to even try to set up something live so you can see how it works and how easy it is. It's important to say that this saves a lot of time, a lot of development time, and it gives you a lot of options that to be able to access them before. What we try to do is we try to make this a little bit more accessible to people that don't know code, but do know what they need to get. So it's not for everyone. We understand this. It is a bit technical. This is why doing tutorials and doing informations regarding Gloo is not a picnic. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to show you that once you get the hang of it, and I think Benny, as a person that uses it daily, can tell you that once you get the hang of it, it's very hard to work without it. Very hard not to have this option once you know it exists.
Yes, I can confirm. Just so everybody knows, I'm not a coder myself. So anything that I've been able to do on these websites is thanks to Gloo, which gives me the possibility to do JavaScript. In the beginning, it might seem a little bit daunting, but I can really assure you that once you get a hang of the concept of it, it becomes really, really simple. And personally, I had to go through the steps, but once I went through them, it's just magic for me. It really opens up the possibilities between Elementor and Jet Engine and Page Builder in general. Page builders are made for being simple to use, but also do simple things. This really opens up the world to create much more dynamic and complex websites.
I want to show them the way that they can connect a specific form field to an event. So we can fetch either, just go to the event that of, let's say, the text. And basically what I want to show is that Interactor has built in within it, it has the option to fetch the values of something from a form field. So for example, here you can see that we set up text1 live change, and then we have this option called fetch from form field. And then we set up the parameter, the form field from which we want to fetch the information. Once we fetch it, it basically allows us to get the value that is input within the form field. So if somebody is starting to type my name, for example, while they type, we're basically be able to fire this this JavaScript in order to fetch that information, and then we can render it using, for example, set text, which is a JavaScript option that allows us to set the text. We can do this in many of the interactions that we have in Gloo, in Interactor. There is the possibility to do more than one parameter. There is an option for a first parameter and a second parameter. It depends on the JavaScript itself. So this, for example, is the first parameter, but let's take, for example, a set attribute, for example. So it's also a JavaScript. It basically adds an attribute to your widget or something, and then you can do either CSS with it or whatever you want to do. But it basically, what it allows you to do is that it allows you to put some data that is not dynamic and some data that is dynamic. So if I take the set attribute as an example, then I can set my attribute to be my attribute or color. And then the dynamic part of it will be to fetch the parameter from the form field. And then basically what it allows you to connect Interactor that was initially built as like a trigger machine. It turns into something more dynamic that is more input oriented, like a user input oriented.
So here's an example for that. We have the text, yeah, and then below we have a font field. At the moment, I just put 4 for an example. And as you can see, when we change them, the font is changing here. So just to give an example of what Omri was saying, so in this case, we're not setting the text, we're setting the CSS, and then we're going to change the parameter of font family. And then the data is coming from a form field, and in this case, we're getting it from the font field. Yeah? And that's how what Omri was just giving an example about. Yeah? So we can take this and then dynamically get the data from a form field. Yeah?
So that's the idea. So this is why it's important to understand there is a learning curve with Interactor, and not just with Interactor, in Gloo in general. There is a learning curve, and we are aware of this, and we're trying to do our best to give you all the information needed. But once you get the hang of it, there is very little limitations to it. I'm sure that the developers, the front-end developers, will tell you that there are limitations, and it's true. It's not completely, it's not a replace for any development need whatsoever, but it is a shortcut, and it can help you do really intense stuff. And you will see as we go along in the webinar, you'll see that you can do really cool things with Interactor. And sometimes even for us, because this is JavaScript, it's jQuery, it's not that we wrote jQuery, it's something that we just modulated. So even for us, we're learning about new options as we go along. Yeah, we're learning about people come to us with ideas that we didn't know before, and you know, it's just really cool. So this is why the community here is important, because I think we can feed off each other a little bit in this sense as well once the tool is in place. Let's first give a small explanation about Fluid. Can you go to the backend so they can see how it works? The feature is called Fluid Logic. Basically what Fluid Logic does, it allows you to create logical chains. Logical chains, we call this logical chains and not dynamic visibility like you would normally think about it, because it does much more than just dynamic visibility. And it allows you to mix and match between conditions that are JavaScript conditions, like a form field input, for example, and PHP conditions, which like can be, for example, the user role. Okay, so if the user role is admin and the name in the field is John, then do something. So we can mix and match between those two, and we can create chains, basically create one after another condition that can be changed with different operator between them, if they're or and. And Benny will show this in a minute. And then once you set the logical chain in place, you can assign the logical chain either to a form field or to a widget. So basically, if you have a form field and you have an option for specify your gender, if you're a boy or a girl, then you can basically what you can do is you can put a photo of a boy and a photo of a girl next to the form field, and just a different widget altogether. And when you change between them, once the condition is met, it will show the corresponding picture. Benny now will show you a little bit how it works and what we built with it already. And all right, take it away, Benny.
Here's one example, mainly needed for speed, for example. So we have different types of templates for our cards, and each template has a different amount of form fields. All right. So, for example, this one has 1, 2, 3, 4. So as you can see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 fields. And in the other case, let's just open in a different tab so we can see it. In this case, we had only one. Yeah? So we don't want to load all the boxes if not needed. So the way this is done with Fluid, for example, is show front text. So I'm looking, now this is going to be a little bit complex to explain. Hopefully I'll do a good job of it. And if you have questions afterwards, we can answer.
Basically, this website is built in a way that you have something called a deck, which is your custom post type of a deck. And inside that you have cards, 18 cards per deck. And basically what's going on here is that the data is saved on the card, but you are working on a deck. So in order for us to fetch that information, we need to use another Gloo feature called ACF relationship field. So we're basically fetching that information from there to see if the condition is met. If that specific template has that specific field or uses that specific field, then it shows it.
We're modifying a deck at the moment. This deck has a template associated to it, or this specific card number 1 has a template associated to it. Inside the template, I have a simple custom field saying, should I show text number 1? Yes, no. Show text number 2? Yes, no. So with Fluid, basically what I'm looking at is I'm looking at the related card template. If this field, so front text 1, is set to block, then we want to do something with it. Yeah? So this is just the condition of the Fluid visibility. So here we can set up all our conditions.
Basically what's going on at the moment, we're using a relationship field tag, which is also a Gloo feature, to fetch the field value from something that is inside a relationship, okay, inside a relationship. So there's a relationship between cards and templates, and we're basically checking in the template to see if we have some toggle enabled on or off. And according to that, we can do visibility conditions.
Yeah, so basically then on our form field itself, so if I go to the form and I look at my text position 1, I have a condition, and I'm saying I can choose, this is the Fluid visibility conditions. I have an action of show, hide, or disable, okay? And basically I'm saying show this field if this condition is met, okay? And the condition is if on the related template, text 1 is set to yes, then do something, and what we're doing is we're showing. So that's how basically we're able to show only one field here and 4 fields here.
I just want to mention one more thing. This condition is a PHP condition, which means that this gets evaluated before the page gets rendered. So basically what's happening is that when we load the page, there's less to load. It's not just hiding them with CSS or something. It's actually not loading at all. So basically this is what you get. You get like this option to create new condition. You give the condition a name, which is just semantic name for you to find easily. Then you have this option to say if it's a form field or not. This is basically where you choose if your condition is JavaScript or PHP. Okay, if it's a form field, it asks for the form field ID, and then the conditions, which are the JavaScript conditions, change accordingly. Can you show us the drop down of the JavaScript conditions for a second? And basically, inside you will see that you will see these conditions that you have. These are conditions that are specific for JavaScript. If some value is equal, if it's not equal, if it's greater than, and so on and so forth. Now, if you change back to the PHP conditions and look again at the condition list that you have below, you will see now that you have an option to change to option of is or isn't. And then here you have something similar to what you would find in dynamic visibility plugins in general. Okay, like option to check if a user is something, if a post is something, if a term is something, and so on and so forth. And this works really nice with our dynamic tags, because our dynamic tags have return options. I'm just gonna give it one more second of explaining to understand what's the idea behind return options. So let's say we have a relationship field, and the relationship field have 3 items related to it: post 1, post 2, and post 3. Sometimes when we get back that information, we don't need to get it back just like 1, 2, 3 with the limiter between them, which is the default option. Sometimes we need to get this data in a different in a different what's the word I'm looking for, in a different setup. So for example, let's say I want to show something only when I have 2 or more items connected. So basically our return options, you have the option for length. Basically what it does, it checks the array, because the relationship is an array that has 3 items in it, and it tells you what is the length of that array. So if it has 3 items, it will tell you 3. If it has 2 items, it will tell you 2. And so on and so forth. And this is very useful, because this way you can do conditions on things that before you really couldn't. Like you needed to say, okay, so maybe if it's empty, don't show it, but if it's not empty, show it. But here you can do much more. You can say, show this widget if I have 2 related items, and show this widget if I have 4 related items, for example, or below or above. Okay, so it gives us more options and more flexibility. And this is just one dynamic tag. We have, I think, about 20 of them, 25 of them. Most of them are really unique. Like you won't find them on other plugins, and they do stuff that you don't see on other plugins. Some do, because we needed to do some connections also when you don't want to always install another plugin. But our state of mind in a general sense is not to create things that already exist, but create things that are just a bit different from how it used to work so far. We are Elementor users. I've been using Elementor since Elementor 1. So I think my serial number is like 1,000 or something like that. And I've been working with Elementor for quite a while, and I got a bit frustrated at some point because I couldn't do more. And I was waiting for Elementor to do it for me, and at some point I just figured out that I can't. And we started doing development for stuff that became repetitive. And then from this grew Gloo. So Gloo is basically a need for someone to do more with a plugin. And from that it grew. Okay, so after you set here the form field, let's say this form field in front of us, you have an option to set the next condition. Benny, can you please turn it on for a second so they can see the options? And here in the next condition, you have a drop down that will allow you to select your next condition as the ones that you have here already. Below that, you have an option to select if it's an and or an or. So why am I pointing this out? So in other fluid visibility and in other dynamic visibility plugins that I had the chance to work with, most of the time they give you a one-off. Basically, you can make as many options as you want, but it's always going to be either and or. It means this and this and this and this, or this or this or this or this. It's never a mix and match. And here you can, and this is where Fluid becomes really powerful. You can basically create, let's say, if the user ID is 5 and the form field is equal to John, or the user ID is 25 and the form field is equal to Margaret. Okay, so basically it gives you this option to create really intensive chains. Now, the other problem that I had with other plugins in the genre is that if I wanted to create something that is a bit more complex in terms of conditions, what would happen is that I would have to do it over and over and over on every single widget. And this is where Fluid diverse from the others. So basically, Benny, can you go to a form for a second for me? So basically, when you go to a form, once you have Fluid installed, once you go inside a form field, 1 second, I'm just waiting for to see it. Okay, you have this option called conditions, and basically you can just assign a chain. Now you can assign the chain from any point in the chain, and basically from this point on, it will just go condition by condition. Now it's not bulletproof. You can still break it. It does allow you to do mistakes, but I think that it's important that we're able to do mistakes, also to learn, but also to not be constrained in any preconceived notions. Like, so we can have anything that we need to do, and every situation that comes to mind can be handled. And this was the big Fluid visibility is something that I worked on personally for almost 6 months, and it's a very complex plugin, a very complex feature because of these kind of things. One more thing that you can do with Fluid, that is, you can also assign the same condition chain to just a different widget, or even to the entire form itself. So if Benny goes to the edit form now, he will just click advanced. Benny, click on the advanced for a second, on the advanced tab. You will see here you have this option called Fluid Visibility. And when you go into the Fluid Visibility, you can decide that the whole form will show or not show according to a condition. Remember, the conditions can be also input from a form field. So you can say, for example, show this form only if somebody typed a specific value on a different form. And this works with pretty much most, I think 90% of the form fields that we have, including our specific ones that are like custom post type, checkboxes, select, and so on, and so on, and so on.
So this project, it is one of the more complex ones, which is using a lot of features between the interactor and Fluid and the other dynamic tags that we've created. Okay, but as you can see, some pretty complex stuff is possible. So we can do live text editing, we can show and hide with PHP conditions or with JavaScript based on your needs. It can be both on a form field or on the widget itself. All right. The fact that it's a WYSIWYG, which is not part of it, is also a Gloo. We'll look into the form options in a different moment. But also here, for example, this is just a very simple tab system. Yeah? So if we look to the back end, we just have our icons, and then we have everything displaying here, for example. But then with JavaScript, so basically with interactor, we're saying if we click on this icon, then show this box. If we click on this icon, show this box, and so forth. So these are just different areas here. So in this case, it's the form, which has an ID, and you're just getting a dynamic ID, so it has the ID of the card itself. And we're just showing and hiding it based on the click. So this is also something done with JavaScript, with the interactive. So that's just one project, just to show you, give you an example. Here's another example of what could be used, but then let's say these are just some random examples. Your imagination is the limit, because with JavaScript, as you know, it's one of the most used languages in the world, and you can use it for many different things. So here again, I see very often come up in both the Elementor and Crockablock group, how we can hide a listing, for example, until the filter is actually selected. So this is a Crockablock Jet Smart filter, and here we have a listing. It's hidden at the moment, okay, just with a display none. And then with an interactor, I'm saying once there is a form input change on this filter, then show the listing. Okay? So we remove the text that was there. Again, we can refresh just to show you. So this is just a simple title widget. There's the listing that is hidden here. And then once we click, there's an input change. It loads, and it will load the products accordingly. Otherwise, it will load all my products, and which I don't want, because I don't want to show the soft products in case they haven't selected it yet. Okay, it's just a simple title with a class to it. So when you're working with interactor, you always need to work either with classes or IDs, so you can target things. That's just typical JavaScript. And then, as you can see here in my navigator, there is a listing. All right, it's just below here and it's not showing. So if I change my class, for example, you'll see it shows, but it will show all my products that I have on my site at the moment. But in this case, I'm hiding it with the class. And then basically I'm just saying very, very simple, activate products. So add a class to the size filter, which is what I called the one over here. Show product, sorry, product listing. All right, so it's this listing. Add a class to call active, and then I just have a CSS saying product listing is display none. Product listing with active is display block.
Show them where we put the CSS, just so they understand.
You can put it wherever you want, but I have it personally in the general CSS, just so that it's easy to find for me.
It's just below. It's just below the interactor and
in the custom CSS, the page.
Yeah, it's just below. You see, just below interactor.
And here I have. It wasn't displayed none, it's opacity 0, but it's the same thing. So here I have product listing with opacity 0, and then product listing with active with opacity 1. So basically, my interactor is just adding the class active to it, and that's what's making it show up. And when is it happening? So that was this is the event itself, and then when you click, when there's an input change in the formula filter, right? This is the formula filter. So I have a class here. So when there's an input change in here, then we want to fire that event, which is show products and hide. In this case, I'm firing 2 events, one after each other. So show products and hide the formula text, which is this one basically. And so if we look at my events, hide the select formula text. I'm just saying hide, and that's an actual animation. Hide is a JavaScript animation, so it's just going to take it and set it at display none. That's pretty much how this is working. And I know a lot of people have been asking how they can hide the listing before it's filtered. You can imagine you can put a second filter here, and you can do exactly the same thing. You can only once the first filter is selected, then you can the second filter will show. So that's another example of how Interactor can be used on a daily basis.
The idea here was that once we select information in one listing, it will show the information on a different listing. This is a car dealership website. Inside the car dealership, basically what they have here is they have options. You see here there's a model. The model is called, in this case, I think, Yaris, Toyota Yaris or something like that. Sorry, I'm not a big car guy. And then, yeah, Toyota Yaris, I was even right. And then inside that, they have a relationship of something called versions. Exactly, versions. So basically this car has many versions, and there is a technical specifications table regarding what you have in each of the versions. So basically what you see here are 2 listings, one by another. The first one on the right is just the names of all the versions. Yeah, gasoline Sky 1.5, gasoline urban, and so on. And on the left side, you have all the data that is stored on that specific version. Okay. Now Benny can explain a little bit how it's set up, so you guys can see.
Yeah, so you can imagine this like a menu. Okay, so this is like a menu to show the data of this specific vehicle. So if we click on one, it will show gasoline SL1. If we click on it, it will change to urban, and it will show the data for urban. Yeah? So one would think, okay, but this is easy. This is just a menu. Yes, but this is a dynamic menu. So now the client can go ahead and create as many versions as he wants. He can relate them to this model, and automatically they will show up here with the correct data. And as soon as he clicks on one of them, it will show its related data. So the only way this was possible is that we have a version with a title of it, and we have all these meta fields inside that version. Yeah? And of course, we want to be able to click and show only the information based on that. So otherwise, there would be very many toggles here. So again, this is just with Interactor. Here I have a template, which is just basically an accordion widget. Inside the accordion widget, I'm getting the different section templates from Elementor. Okay, just to show the data, which is then connected to the meta field, which is totally fine. But what the Interactor is doing is when we click on our, again, I'm using a post ID because I want to have a unique ID for it.
Sometimes we need to create something in Interactor, and we need it to be dynamic. We need it to work according to for example, let's say we have 6 or 7 items and each item has an ID. It's representing of a post or something like that. In this case, for example, what we did is we took the target, we set the target, instead of putting in an ID for it, we catch the post ID, and then we added in the before car button. And basically what we're getting is that each item has a unique ID called car button and the number of the item. And this way, when you'll see when we go now to Interactor and to the trigger, to the triggers itself and how it works, you will see that basically the idea behind this is that it will work regardless, because it will recognize that the fact that it's looking at something dynamic at the moment. And this way you can do one, and you don't need to like anticipate how many items you have in advance. You basically can do one and it will work on all of them. It's very important to understand where to do this stuff with Interactor. So for example, we work with Interactor here. We're working inside the listing. So we're inside the listing, and that's where we're doing our Interactor. Why? Because we needed the code to print out accordingly for each of the items. Yeah, we need to have one item for this post ID, one code for this post ID, one code for this post ID, and this is basically how we do it. This is the way to do it. This is how we can specify a unique item. Okay, this is the key to doing this kind of listing interactions. Inside listing, you do the code within the listing itself, and you give it a post ID and then a before and after.
Just to give you guys an idea, so this is my section here, okay, of my listing, and that's where I'm giving it, for example, the car info block, okay, and then so it's called car info block, and it has the ID of this specific post. Yeah? And if we look, this part here is a separate listing. So just to show you so everything is clear, this one. This is the listing for the title itself, which is on the right side. And as you can see, if I go to my section, here's my ID of car button, right? So, and then again with the ID. So that's how I know that, there we go. So in my Interactor, I'm saying when we click on car button, okay, which is the one on the right side, then what should it do? It should hide all the others, show the car info, activate the background, remove the active background color from others, and remove the hide channels. Yeah? So as you can see, it's doing quite a few different things all in once. And basically, these are just all separate events. So hide all the others is I'm setting a CSS to car info that is not the car info block current ID. Okay, so all the ones that are not current ID, I want to show a display of none. And again, this is set CSS. I could have done animations hide, it would have been done the same job. Okay. Then the other is show car info. So set CSS to this specific car block, and we want to set it to display block. Then we have activate the background, and as you can imagine, these are just pretty much the same things. It's just styling at this point. So set CSS background color dbdb, which is just to give it an active state, and so on and so on. And as I said before, with JavaScript, your imagination is pretty much the limits of what you can do with it. So here we're doing a set CSS again on the version box that is not the current, sorry, this one. So not the one that we clicked on, and we're removing the color. So, and as you can see within the Interactor, we can chain as many events as we want with one single trigger. Okay. You can also delay them. So for example, if you want something to happen a few milliseconds later, or a second later, 2 seconds later, after you clicked or after you hovered in something, this is where you can set a delay. All right. And basically, there's one other thing that I'd like to show you, which is conditions in Interactor. So you can turn them on or off. And basically what I'm saying here is if the parameter has, or if the URL has a parameter of view, and then version and an ID in it, then we want to show the current version. And basically what that will do is it will hide all the others. So basically in this page, now I don't have a version in front of me, but if I would do view and then the ID of one of these, it will show automatically that version. That was because the client wanted to be able to link to specific ones. So we can also do conditions. In this case, it's on a parameter, but as you can see, we have all the different condition types here. which is very similar to dynamic visibility. And then here it's just a dynamic field, and you can pretty much use any of Elementor dynamic tags to get this to work.
I understand the setup might be a little bit daunting and it takes some time to get used to. That's fine. This kind of stuff are a bit more complex and advanced than the normal Elementor stuff that you can see daily happening. So I'm just going to focus real quick on some of the extra features that Interactor has. We're not going to go too much in depth with those, but I do want to show you what's going on here. Okay. So first, as Benny mentions, we have conditions, and basically conditions, if you notice, there is like a chaining process here. So you create events and you chain them to triggers, and then you have also conditions, and you can chain triggers to conditions. So basically, you can set up a whole logical concept of what needs to happen with triggers and events, and then decide that it happens only when a PHP condition is evaluated. This is a bit more advanced also when you do, when you take a developer to do for you work, then it becomes a bit more back-endish, like more back-end oriented. So you can create all the code in the back-end, and then you can do PHP conditions according to. Now, if you scroll a bit down, Benny, I want to show them the variables and the different connectors that we have. So basically what happens is that we have something called variables. Basically, variables give you an option to give it a name and a value, and of course you can get it dynamically using any dynamic tag, and basically catch whatever you want. So for example, we can catch the post ID, we can catch the title, the name of the post, we can catch whatever we want to catch. It doesn't really matter, it's up to us. And then we have this option here in we call data layer, Zapier webhook, or custom webhook. They are all the same, they work in the same manner. Basically what's happened in, let's show Zapier for a second. So basically what's happening here is that you can set a webhook name, you can give the URL of the webhook, you can decide the method of the webhook, and you can decide which of the parameters you want to connect to it. Now, if we jump to triggers and you look at a trigger, just open the current one that you have, we don't need to create a new one. If you look at this one, if you notice here, we have this option called events to fire, and then below that we have data layer to fire and Zapier hook. So basically what happens is you can connect not just events, but also webhooks with variables to those specific options, to those specific triggers. Okay, so let's say a client clicks an image, you can grab the user ID of that client. If it's not a guest, you can grab the name of the picture, you can grab the post, the page name, and you can send that to a webhook on Zapier, and from there do whatever you want. You can also do the same thing by injecting this information to data layer. Basically, the data layer connector, what it does, it uses data layer push. So if you need to do more advanced measuring, you can pass new parameters to your data layer really easily with Interactor. There is one more thing that we have a lot of dynamic tags that are a bit unconventional. For example, we have the cart values, a dynamic tag for WooCommerce, and so on. So you can fetch all kind of information and pass that in your data layer, like the current status of somebody's cart, for example, while they clicking on different content. So it's very nice. You can get really complex with it. And we also have an option for custom webhook that works in the same way. Basically, you just create your custom webhook. At the moment, it's not turned on here, so you don't see it. But you basically create it, and then you can connect the variables that you want to pass. So you can pass certain variables to one data layer and different variables to a different data layer. And it's very modular. Okay, we worked a lot on getting this to be as modular. It came at a cost. It is a bit more, there is a learning curve because of that, but I think it's very powerful and you can do really nice things with it. All right. The next thing that we want to show you is a little bit of DOM control. Okay, so basically what you're seeing here is that you have this options here, and once you start working with this option, changing the distance, changing the right distance. By the way, all these form fields that you see here, this is an Elementor form still, and all the form fields that you see here, that like the one that does the math in the bottom, and the one that changes the distance and the top position and the right position. These are all form fields, range form fields, and stuff that are included with Gloo. Now, when you change it, they also do math between them, so you can see in the beginning in the
12 square meters, for example. If we change it back to 5, then it will do the math.
And it also changes the total price. And then here we're using another feature that I want to talk. It's called checkout anything. Okay, I will have Benny explain a little bit how it works for you guys, so you understand. I just want to say that this is the form action. Basically, you can add an action to your form, and then when you create this form, it basically moves you to the checkout of WooCommerce. It's not instead of WooCommerce. It just gives you a bit more control of what you can do when you go into checkout with WooCommerce. And Benny will now explain this a little better than me.
I'll try at least. So yeah, this is basically an Elementor form starting from the height up until the add to cart button. Okay, so these, again, similar to the first product that we looked at, we're just dummy manipulating at the moment. So we're taking the image, we're moving its position, its size. Here we have some buttons. So for example, we have a living room. If they want to see this wallpaper in the kitchen, they can see it differently. It's still a work in progress, so we still need to finish them. But for example, here you can see living room and kitchen. So it just places an image on top of it. Again, this is just some HTML, and then with Gloo, changing the links of the images. To show you the form itself, if we go to the back end and we look at our form, this is an Elementor form, and we have our product price, for example. It's a hidden field, and it's getting it directly from price, from the product itself. We have our centimeters. So this is our width centimeter field, for example, and it's just a number field. Then if we go to top distance, this is a range field. Now this is a Gloo feature. Okay, so we have range field, and it's basically going to give you a range where you can add the min number, the max number, the initial value. So let's say I want it to be start off at 100. At least the slider will start off in the center of it on 100. And then we have our width of the fields for desktop, tablet, and mobile. Our step range. So if we want it by 1, by 50, by 10, depending on the type of values that you have inside. Then we have our tooltip. So this is the box on top. We have our scale. So if we want to show below the different numbers, it's normally used if you don't have too many of them, because if you have a step 1 and 340, it's basically, I don't know if you can see it, but it's very tiny little lines. So it's just the way scales work. Then we have labels, which is, we'll add the labels to them in case you want to put them. So these are the range fields. Then if we go down where we have total square, so this is our calculation field. And basically what we're doing is we're taking our total square meters. So there's one before. So calculation field is basically taking the product width times product length. And these two IDs that you see here, these two product width and product height, is nothing else than the ID of our form field. Right? So you can pretty much take any form field that you want and then do some math with them. So
first, you can use a calculation field, get the information from the calculation it does, and use another calculator, so you can create really complex calculations, basically by just stacking those calculation fields one on top of each other. Another thing that we have here is the option to show or hide it. So some of the calculation fields can be hidden, and some of the calculation fields can be visible. And that's up to you. You have this option to hide them. Another thing that we have is we have some options regarding the number, the way that the number is returning. So we got 1000 separators, we have a default value, and then we have this option called isRepeater field. Now, I'm not going to go too much in depth in this. I'm just going to explain it real quick. If Benny, you can just toggle this on for a second so I can show them. So basically, we have in Gloo, we have an option to do a repeater field in the form. How does that work? You basically choose one form field that is called repeater start and another form field that's called repeater end. And then you can just put any fields between those two fields, and it will repeat them. It will give you an option to add another line and another line and another line. Now, what we try to do here is to try to to make a situation where somebody can go like, okay, so let's say I have a disability percentage. So my disability percentage is 5, and then I get another 10, and then I get another 20. Okay, so it's basically aggregating. So you can put the repeater ID here, and you could put the repeater subfield too. So which one of the subfield is the one that you want to actually take? Then in the operation, Benny, can you show the options? In the operations, you can have this option to do either addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division. And then you have this base value. So for example, if you need a base value, for example, if it's not multiplication, if it's addition, and you need a base value of 0, for example, then you can set that. And you have this another option is called is percentage. Ben, if you can turn it on for a second. Once you turn it on, what can happen with is percentage, it can get to a point where you get, like, let's say you get 45%. But in real life, what you want to show is you want to show the difference. You don't want to show the aggregated 45%. What you want to show is how much of 100 is not the 45, which is 55. So what you will get on the other side is, if you want to invert the option, you can do it with this. You can basically invert the math. Now, maybe if you don't have an idea on how this kind of percentage calculator will work, maybe you go like, wait, what? And I can understand it can be a little bit daunting. The first time we worked with it, me and Benny also scratched our head a little bit. But the idea is that it allows you to do new types of calculators that before that are a bit more complex to do and weren't supported with any other calculation field that we saw. So basically, our calculation field is special, but what is really special about it can also create calculations from repeating data.
Basically, yeah, so we have our different forms. So here we were calculating the amount of square meters divided by 100, just so we get the meters itself. And then we're using that field. So we gave it a total square meter ID. And then inside the next field as a calculation, we're dividing it again by 100. Okay, just so we get, because that was the square meter. Here now, for the price, what we're doing is we're taking our square meter price, which is the first field that we have here. And we're multiplying it by the total square meters, which is the calculated field that we have above. That's how we're getting our total price. And basically all of this has an action after submit, which is a check on anything. Okay, this is a Gloo feature. Once you activate the check out anything, instead of email or anything, we're using check out anything. We have this new accordion here, toggle, and basically we have some options of where do we want to redirect once they add it. So we can choose to add it to the cart or directly to checkout. What is the source of the product? Okay, so in this case it's manual. If we had an ID for repeaters, let's say we have a form where we want to let them choose multiple products with a repeater, then you can choose from repeater field, and that's where you can put your form field of the repeater, and it will get the separate products. But in our case, we're just using one product. The source, we can open it up for manual, and the product ID, we need to give it the ID, so you can either give it manually. Let's say you're on you're creating a book website, for example, and you're on an archive page of the author, and you want to add that specific book to the cart every time, then you would manually put your ID here, for example. Where in our case, we're on a product template, so we're getting the current product that we're on. Then we can either select to get the quantities from a form field, so we could put a number field, or we can just manually put it in. So in my case, I would just want 1. Are we getting the price from the form field? Yes, we are. What is the form field price? There we go. And adding this basically will just take this product with this information and add it to the cart. Then we also have some extra order meta. So for example, I want to bring along some of this data to my order so that when I get the order, I can actually see what the client chose. So product width, for example, I'm bringing it along both as in the order meta. I want to show it. I want to show it both in the cart and in the checkout. I can give it a prefix. So let me just show you what all this means. So if I do 500 by 300, 74 and 74, and I add to cart, I need to change the message. It's forward me to the cart. Yeah, here we go. So we got our image, and as you can see, we got a 500 and 340. This is basically how we check out everything works. So basically, we're taking all this information and we're moving everything along to the cart. So as you can see, we have both in the, it's automatically going to add it to any cart, and then the checkout also will have it. Please ignore the image not showing up at the moment. It's my Chrome. And once we place the order, it will be in the email for the admin, and it will also be inside the order itself. So this is check out everything, which you can add meta fields, similar to, not exactly the same like a product add-on, but pretty similar. So we can do something specific for a product here.
Just want to mention that check out anything also supports relationship fields.
So in the order meta, for example, if you want to relate, let's say inside the form, they're going to choose a different post, for example, or from a different post type that you added, and you want to add that as a relationship to your order. What you can do is with either ACF or Jet Engine, you can create a relationship field for the order itself. And then this is where you can actually go and you can grab your form field. So let's say that you would grab the field that has the post ID. Then you would, in this case, we only have it for ACF at the moment, but it's Jet Engine is almost out there. And here basically it will add, you can put the relationship field key of the ACF relationship, and it will add this post or the post that you selected from the form directly as a relationship to the order.
Let me give you a practical example. Let's say we have a course and we want to add this course as a related field when they check out. Okay, so we can have the course that is a different custom post type. We can have it stored as a related post ID or something like that to the product, and then we can fetch it, and it will relate course. It will relate it also to the order custom post type, okay, to the actual order. So when the admin of the website sees the order that was done on his website, he can see where it's related to. Okay, hope it makes sense to everybody. All right, let's jump on Dynamify now. Just want to explain Dynamify before we get started. Now, this is just the website, the website, and you can see here basically that we have tabs, we have accordions, and we have carousel, and we have a slider. I used the one by Jet Engine because the one by Elementor is just hard-coded. And basically what's happening now is that I'm getting all this information that you see here. I'm getting this from a repeater. Benny, if you can open the backend for a second, you will see that it's basically just a repeater that I filled out in the backend. Now, for me, it was always a problem. The repeaters and the way that we treat repeaters in the Elementor realm, in the Elementor ecosystem, repeaters are very underappreciated because they're very, very much needed. The best example I can give you for that is that we have a repeater and we have this option to do questions and answers for a client. Yeah, he wants to, every page, every post has a question, Q&A, frequently asked questions section. And we want also to connect this frequently asked question with a schema, okay? So basically, we need to give them the option to do a repeater because we don't know how many questions we have in advance. We don't know if we have 5 questions, 10 questions, 2 questions. We can't know in advance. In case you create so many fields in advance, you create just the repeater, and then you can create another item and another item, and you can set which fields are going to be inside the repeater. Okay, so basically what you see here is just a bunch of widgets that have one thing in common. Benny, if you choose one of them, you'll see that these widgets allow you this option called add item. These are repeaters as well, but these are Elementor repeaters. Problem with Elementor repeaters is that they're not dynamic. You cannot really set them to follow a repeater. And this is where Dynamify goes into action. I will give Benny the stage to explain this a little bit better.
Dynamify has a little toggle like this. Now, as I already said, any widget in Elementor that has this repeater function, so add new or add new, you will automatically find a Dynamify icon next to it. So in our case, this is a slider, and we just turn it on, right, with a toggle here. And then we have to tell it a source. So it's either Jet Engine, or it's a post type, or it's an ACF repeater. Okay, we need to tell it where the data is coming from.
It also works with WooCommerce variations, but for the section, for this moment, we're going to focus only on the repeaters because we're just a little bit short on time, right?
Yeah, in our case, we made the repeater in the backend with Jet Engine, so we select the Jet Engine. Context is from the post. It could be a user, so we need to tell it because spits out different kind of code. So then we have the repeater field. Here we have Peter the repeater. Now, don't laugh. That's just our joke about it. But that's basically our field ID, our repeater ID. Then we have, so that's activating the fact that it will get the data from the repeater. Then we have our single repeater. Now we have a tag, okay, called Dynamify tag. You will find it under Gloo. Let me just copy this so that we don't lose it. So I can remove it. And if we click on the dynamic tag, scroll all the way down to our Gloo tags, we have Dynamify. All right, we're going to choose Dynamify. And this is where you're going to put your subfield. Right? So in our case, we have my image, which is basically the repeater subfield. So we have Peter the repeater is the main field, and my image is the subfield. And that's pretty much it, because then we can also use our title. So in our case, we have our title, which is again just a subfield of our data. In the back end, you will see it blank, but when you go to the front end, there we have our magic. We have a slider, and as you can see, it's getting the data. How can I use a repeater with slider widget? Can I use a repeater with slider widget? I use a third party, as you can see. How can I use a repeater? The second one is, can I use a repeater? And I use a third party. So it's getting the data dynamically from here. If we were to add a new one, it would automatically pop up here. Then we're basically doing the exact same thing for the different widgets, just to give you some examples. So if we go to the next widget, which is an advanced carousel, okay, same thing. We're getting the stuff from the exact same place. So Peter the repeater. Then we have our dynamic tag for the image, and our title, and our description. And as you can see, we're doing this pretty much with any kind of widget that allows. So here we have the Elementor accordion. So again, Dynamify, and then we have a tabs widget. Again, we're just using Dynamify, and as you can see here in the front end, here's our accordion, and it's showing a nice accordion with all our repeaters. Or we have our tabs, which is basically like this. Another very important thing to know is, for example, when we use, this is something we use often for our clients, is on the accordion widget, for example, but also on a toggle and anywhere else, you can activate Dynamify. Then just below, Gloo has a schema control, right? So if we toggle this on, well, this is a different website, so it's already on this side. If we go to schema control, we can activate it, and basically we can tell it what kind of schema type. So here we have an FAQ or a how-to. In our case, let's say this is a FAQ, typical FAQ, and we want to add schema to it. Then we can just toggle it on. Then we have our Dynamify again. So we can say Dynamify, and we just repeat. So what is our source? Our jet engine source, our post. And in this case, it was Peter. And now each one of these, so here we turned on Dynamify. Now we just need to tell it what's the question and where's the answer coming from. Again, we would just go, scroll down, find our Dynamify tag, add the subtitle or the repeater subtitle. Again, search for Dynamify tag and my tag. It was. Okay, now every one of these will have a schema attached to it, and Google will pick up on it. So that's Dynamify for you. And as you can imagine, it can be pretty nice to use for many different reasons. We use it often for FAQs, for example, but it can be used for tabs. It can be used for galleries in case they want to make something simple, like you want to give them control over it without bringing the client into Elementor, which, as most of you know, can be pretty funny and dangerous sometimes. So in our case, we prefer not to do it. We do everything in the back end so the clients can handle with meta fields and repeaters.
All right, I want to show you guys one more feature. I think we have anything else from your side, Benny?
No, the last one was a typical use case, but I think people got the idea of what Interactor does. Basically, very quickly, I'm not going to show the back end. Here we have typical desktop filters. It's always a challenge how to show them on a mobile. So if we go to mobile, now we have our button. And then when we click on our button, wrong button. When we click our button, we're getting a slide up. This is basically the exact same filters, just with Interactor. When click on a button, show the slide in the thing, with a CSS. So that's just another use case of how we use Interactor on a daily basis.
So basically, what are we seeing here? This one is called, we call this dynamic SVG. It's actually, the name of the feature is Composer. We're going to talk about it. It's a very cool feature. I just want to explain a little bit what are we seeing here. I just picked up an SVG from the internet, and I created two meta fields, the one called color1 and the one called color2. Now, if you can go back to the front end for a second. Okay, so basically you're seeing the same SVG twice. One is an image, the right side, and the left side is the same SVG exactly. I just copied the HTML code for it. And basically what you see here is that it fetches the colors dynamically. And this is a very small example of the power of Composer, because Composer can do much more. And then if you click Edit with Elementor now and open the... So basically, this is the setup that we have with Composer. Composer is actually a widget, which we don't have a lot of. We have actually very little of this feature, of these options. Like most of our stuff is dynamic tags and extensions like interactor and fluid. We don't really have much widgets, but this widget, basically what it does, it allows you to create items, as you can see above. Benny, can you open col1 for a second? So the first item that you can see here is called col1. It's a name I give it. It's basically color1. And then below it, I can catch a custom field. In this case, I just used the normal jet engine custom field dynamic tag to catch color1. Okay, once I have this, I just create another one. The second one is called color2, and it's basically a custom field that brings out the information from color2. Now, if you look at the Composer below, you will see I basically have a place where I can write things. And the original one, if you see on, I think, yeah, here, thank you, Benny. So you can see here that basically there is a class, and we give this class a fill color. And I just replace the color with my text, col1 and col2. And now I have a dynamic SVG. Now, this is useful for many, many things, okay? First of all, at the moment, we're talking about the type. You can see you have the option is called type. It's HTML markup. But you have more options from within the plugin. Benny is going to show you a bit more while I speak. So you have more options on what you can do with it. You can also do math using a dynamic composer. It has this option as well. We're going to show this in a second. And basically the idea behind it is that sometimes you just need more than one dynamic data in a row. Let's say I want a text like what Benny is showing you now. Yeah, it just show you a very simple example. Benny, now let's do like add another item and fetch the post ID and say that my post ID is, just add that to, okay. And basically what it allows me to do, it just allows me to write just normal text, and it will fetch the information. This is basically very similar to writing PHP, because basically what we're doing is we're fetching all the dynamic data that we need. We can use as many as we want. You can see just add item and add item and add item. Funny enough, it can also work with Dynamify, but we didn't really try it ever because it just doesn't make much sense. And you can basically just create really dynamic data in just one thing. You can also take HTML like the SVG that I took below and just change certain values of it to be dynamic. It's very useful. It's a very useful tool. I think many will agree with me that it's been very helpful working forward. So just to show you how it works, Benny, if you can click update on the page and show us the preview for a second, and then just change the colors in the backend for a minute and a quick refresh, and then you'll see that it's now in the new colors. Another thing that I want to mention is that we have this other than just doing this, and then just printing out data in a string way. Yeah, we can also do calculations. If you can go back for a second to the front. So basically, if we change the HTML markup, if you change it to calculation, then first of all, it gives you, I'm just going to go over what it gives you. So there's the HTML wrapper. It gives you an option to give it a div or a span or whatever. Then you have an option for before text and another option for after text. Then you have this option for 1000 separator and a decimal. And then basically what you can do is you can just grab information and start doing math with it. Benny is going to give you just a small example. You basically put a meta field of a number before, set it to 1,000, and he just did some very basic math. But Benny, I think you need to do a little bit of design on it, on styling. Yeah. Okay, so basically now you don't see the calculation. You will see the calculation only in the front end, but you can see the algorithm. And now you see that you're getting this option. So you can do, basically you can take information from across your page, like how old someone is or whatever, and just fetch that information and then do math with it. It works really well with other dynamic tags that we have. For example, we have a dynamic tag that is called time span. And you can do with time span, you can choose 2 dates and then print out the amount of years between those 2 dates. Yeah. So what you can do in this case is you can just like do math. You can go like, okay, if my age and your age together is 100 years. Okay, I know it's not the best example in the world, but you understand what I mean. You can do like really nice things, and with our dynamic tag, they're just a little bit more special. You can get like all kinds of specific information that you might need. I want to leave a few minutes for questions. We don't have much time left. So first of all, I just want to say before we start with questions, I just want to say really thanks everybody for joining. You've been an amazing audience. You've been sitting here and listening to me and Benny babble for about an hour and a half. So much respect to you. We're happy that you're here and you show interest, and we hope that you can find a way to use Gloo in your projects. And I know some of you already did, but you can find ideas to incorporate in other places and enjoy what it does. It's actually a lot more features available. We're welcoming you to go to our website and watch our tutorials and follow us on social media. We're on Facebook. We have a community. We're also on Instagram, and we even have a Discord channel where you get everything oriented. So first question, I think, is from Case. Hi, Case. How are you? You're a longtime friend of us. No, you're right. We didn't cover the return. Let's cover the return for a second. Benny, can you go back to the dynamic SVG page for a second? I just want to show them the return options. Regarding the loop from Elementor, we're waiting to see how this goes first. We know that Elementor, because they have a lot of codependent plugins, like third-party plugins, it takes time for them to do an official release, and we want to see what they cover first, so we don't waste our time developing things that are out of their scope, because that's pretty much what we're about, developing things that are out of their scope. So at the moment, we don't intend to do any filters or anything. We just want to wait to see what they get us, and we want to see also the other players in the market, like Jet Engine, for examtle, that already have the Jet Smart filter. We want to see how they react to this release by Elementor and what kind of option they give, because they already have a really good plugin.
Filters, do you mean querying or actual filtering down?
I think he was talking about actual filters, like similar to the Jet Smart filter, if I understand correctly.
Okay. Because the queries, we still need to see what Elementor will add to it, query-wise. But our context dynamic tag does do some querying, does help with the querying already when it comes to the post widget. What it seems like is that their loop builder will be very similar to the post widget, so it should be able to work there already.
There is something I want to show. It's a good question, Case. Thank you again for your question. I do want to show something. All right, Benny, just cover for one example, the UI, the options of return, the output formats, so we can understand. I'm just going to explain this quickly. The idea is that a lot of the taxonomy, a lot of the tags that we have, they return multiple values. So, for example, one second, Ori, I'll be right with your question. I just want to finish answering the first question regarding the output format. So, the idea is that we can get data that is multiple. Let's say, for example, we have a post and it's connected with 3 different categories. So the taxonomy tag, which we have, will return 3 options. It return taxonomy like category 1, category 2, and category 3. Then when we do the actual option itself, sometimes we need to return it like we would like to return it as ordered list, for example, like the first category, the second category, and the third category. Sometimes we would like to return delimiter base. So basically category 1, comma, category 2, comma, and so on. And we can change this according to whatever we want. We can use any delimiter that we want. We can also use icons if we decide. Then the next thing that we have is we have this option to return length, which is the size of the size of the array length. So if we have 3 options, it will show us 3. And then the last thing that we have is that we can do also specific array, and this is where it gets really interesting, because basically we can fetch only the second value, for example, of the 3 values. Only the second one we need to fetch. We need to fetch that number instead of trying to do all kinds of jumps in the airs to try to fetch this specific data and try to exclude it. It's pretty easy with Gloo. You just get the taxonomy term. You say that you want array index specific, and you just say which index in the array to show. And it's very unique in this sense, and it works. We have this return options in many plugins, in many modules as well. So the ACF relationship field, the jet engine relationship field. There's a lot of stuff that we're doing from that standpoint that allows us to return specific items, which is a very good example. I hope I answered your question, Case. If not, write to me, please. Regarding Ori question, let's see what she asked. So, can we use the input from the form in the edit composer? Okay, you have a really good question here. Actually, we are working now on a few new features that should be released in the next week or 2. And one of those features is very similar to the calculator field. But instead of being a calculator field, it's going to be a formatting field. And basically what it does, it allows you to catch information. For example, you have first name and last name form fields in your form. You will be able to catch that form field, right hello, apostrophe or comma, and then first name, and then space, and then last name, and it will print out whatever you want. So I think this will cover your
basically a composer, but instead of being a widget, it will be a form field.
Yeah, like it's going to be like the composer field. This is something that we're working on. We think we're very happy about it. We actually did a post on this on our community. I will advise you to go check it out. We did a little bit of a roadmap to show you what kind of things we're working on at the moment, so you know what to be waiting for. And also, we're always happy to get your feedback. Sometimes we get amazing feedbacks from you guys. Case, I know there's a few things that you asked last time that we met, and we are implementing those, so you will be able to use the ACF relationship field to populate form fields and so on. While we're on the subject, we're gonna take 2 more minutes just to show you a quick thing. Benny, can you open a form field quickly? Just want to show them the quick overview of the form fields that we have for them. Just simple. We're not gonna go too much in depth. So basically, we have the first thing that we have is we have the terms field, so you can return a term. In this case, let's say our terms we want to output as a select. You can output whatever you want. There's 3 options there, and then you can basically choose what of the taxonomies you want to print out. You can exclude terms as well. Include terms. You can decide the depth. So if something has children and children and children, you can decide you don't want all depth, or you can have 3 different options in regarding to what kind of depth you want. And the rest is just normal place selection and placeholder. It's the same things as they are. Placeholder, I think, just gives us the option to put some custom text in the beginning. Similar to this, we have another field called we have user types and post types. So basically, you can return a list of your users. You can return a list of your posts or pages or whatever you want. You can see here you have all these pages already set up.
This, of course, comes in handy. For example, if you're creating a post from the front end and you want to relate the post to another product, a post, a page, or anything, then you can use such a field. And then when you map it,
and then we have also colors, and there's a few more. I don't want to go too much into it. I just want to tell you guys, go look at it. There's quite a lot of things going on there. Benny, if you can go to the backend for a second so they can see the settings page. I just want to show them where they can find this. So you go to form extensions, turn it on, go to settings. And here on the left side, you will see fields mostly. This is mostly fields. The last one that we added is country dial code field. And on the right side, you will see actions that are available for after action. So for example, front end submission, front post editing, user submission, user editing, submitting a comment, OTP, which is basically sends a code. It requires integration with a third party. So right now we're supporting only Twilio, just for you guys to know, but we are looking into others as well. Also a request that we got from our friend Case. Then we have the Zoos CRM, Salesforce CRM, ActiveTrail, and PowerLink CRM. These are all available, and there's a few settings inside the settings page. We're not going to get too much into that at the moment. Okay, so Case, regarding the calculation not working inside the loop, we are aware of this. We're working on it. It's already in the works. I think it should be able to check it. I see you said it misinclude. We actually didn't think about doing include only, but we're always open to suggestions. If you guys post in the community, we're always open to suggestions, see what we can do. Populate check terms inside post. This is another thing that you spoke with us, Case. Some of it we are looking into, and some of this is a bit less is too specific in this situation. I see a question: is my backend keyboard accessible? I think at the moment, and that we cannot navigate with the keyboard, but I will look into that. Thank you for this important question.
So the toggles and stuff that you can navigate through. As for moving from going into the settings page, looks like it's accessible. It's getting out probably that we need to work on.
Thank you, Aaron, for coming. We appreciate it. It was a very cool webinar. We feel like we got a lot covered, and we have a lot more to show. It's just, this plugin just never ends with the ideas and stuff that's coming up to us, and we release also a lot of features on almost on a daily basis. So again, thank you very much for joining. Again, thank you for everything. I hope we answered all the questions. If you have any more questions, please don't hesitate to call us. Thank you, Case, also for your kind words. Thank you also, Anne. Again, thank you everybody for coming, and we will see you on Volume 2.
Thank you for watching the Gloobinar Vol.1. If you're watching the recording because you missed the live session, don't worry. There's plenty more webinars and events coming soon. Don't forget to join our Facebook community so that you don't miss the announcement of the next one. Follow us on Instagram as well, at Gloo for Elementor. And if you have any more questions, don't forget to ask. There's many tutorials here on our YouTube channel too that are sure to clear any other doubt you may have. Supercharge your Elementor work at gloo.oo.